This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Well, welcome to the altar of Bard. I only lasted 1 week with the dressing up in my finest, Gary, so I apologize. I have no excuse. I should have dressed up. I'll resort to that next week.
Well, I appreciate you not making me look bad, so we'll spin it that way. I did appreciate the fine dress last week, but this week we'll be just fine. We're bringing it either way.
I love it. I think we start off with, we've been covering the impeachment trial of Ken Paxton, the Republican Attorney General in Texas. As we are talking today, Sunday, he was acquitted yesterday.
Saturday? Yeah.
And
on 16 counts, all 16 counts, he was acquitted
on every single count. By the way, I'll leave it at this. We've been playing some clips of lawyers. There's a clip that's going around that I'd love to take a look at. As I've said on the previous episode, this was a great master class in cross-examination by the lawyers defending Paxton. I apologize to Dick DeGuerin and Rusty Hardin, who, as I previously called them, and well-deserved legends of the Texas bar. Yeah. We haven't played any clips of theirs, but there's just been some great cross-examination here. Here is one example of that.
He caused employees of his office to prepare an opinion in an attempt to avoid the impending foreclosure of properties.
But you don't know whether those properties belong to Nate Paul or business entities controlled by Nate Paul, do you? You don't know that?
Nothing other than what's been reported in the media.
You don't know that what's been reported in the media? Have you ever heard the phrase self-licking ice cream cone before?
No, sir.
Let me explain to you what a self-licking ice cream cone is, Mr. Vassar. A self-licking ice cream cone is when a bunch of employees at the Attorney General's office begin to suspect their boss. They read it in the media. They believe what the media says. They report it to the FBI. And then the media reports that you went to the FBI. That's a self-licking ice cream cone. Are you familiar with the expression now?
Based on your description, yes, sir.
The indignation.
I'd call that a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Sure.
But a self-licking ice cream cone.
That's the Texas version.
It gives a flavor, if you will, that self-fulfilling prophecy doesn't. And it suggests on a self-licking ice cream cone that there is a circular logic to this. And this, by the way, this is kind of a lazy reporter's trick. I mean, they do this all the time. The LA Times is this is their stock and trade. They will write something and then they'll try to initiate some public entity to get involved by having the people that they have prodded into doing it. And then they stand back and say, oh, well, it has nothing to do with us, which is exactly what happened in this case. By the way, the reason I liked that is because the lawyer was asking the witness a question on a different subject. And he said, the witness volunteered based on what I saw in the media. It took, it was ba-boom of one beat. Lawyer pivoted immediately and took that comment and immediately shoved it right back down the witness's throat. That is the art of cross-examination, where you are so prepared that when a witness gives you an opening, you take that opening like somebody whose offensive tackle has just cleared out one of the linemen, and you hand the ball to the halfback or the fullback, and you jam right through it. The old John Robinson of the L.A. Rams fame.
Well, I appreciate the football reference on a Sunday morning, but also I thought that it was, whether it was performative or not, it was masterful the way that the lawyer showed his indignation at the comment and then was able to immediately shove it down his throat in an artful way. I would imagine that was something that he was prepared for, but he made it look, with the performance.
Right, exactly. You make it look effortless, but at the same time you wait to do it, and it was just well executed.
Yeah,
cross-exam. That's not 101. That is cross-examination
401.
401. Exactly. Yeah. I love it. And for those who have not been watching this and want to chalk this up to a partisan vote by Republicans to acquit Ken Paxton, remember, it was the Republicans who voted to bring the impeachment in the first place. You can go through all the machinations or this or that, but for those of us who spent way too much time and don't have enough hobbies watching the C-SPAN coverage of this, there was no way under the standards that for impeachment that there could have been in good conscience a conviction. I'm not saying anything other than that. If you take a look at what the standard is, the standard of proof, if you take a look at what was proved, if you take a look at what I thought was some pretty effective and devastating cross-examination, that was the right result.
Yeah, I agree. And it was very, very well executed by his team kind of across the board. It seemed like they were 10-8 rounds kind of, every single day that we watched clips. And
I would say Cogdell is of a slightly, he's my vintage, but he's probably 10 years behind Dick DeGuerin and Rusty in terms of age and maybe the next wave, so to speak, but below Cogdell in terms of age and generation. The lawyers that were there are clearly rising stars. Busby did a spectacular job. This gentleman did a good job. There was another lawyer on the team that also did a good job. It was great. It was a great showcase for Texas legal talent, I thought. And
I couldn't agree more. And I think it would be fun to maybe talk to one of those guys sometime soon. So maybe we'll look into doing something like that. I'm no problem.
Yeah, if we can get a midweek where we do an interview, that would be spectacular. I also have wanted, just because he's always getting so much flack and he's been able to kind of keep his cool while those are throwing brickbats at him. I'd love to get Dershowitz on as well.
Yeah.
Talk to him about some of the goings on. Interestingly, this week, contrary, and I may have mentioned this before, Gary, I've done it privately to people. The Mark Meadows and the others who tried to get the case out of state court into federal court.
Right, in Georgia.
They interesting were at least at the trial court level, that was denied. They're now in the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit has asked one specific question. That question is basically, does the statute apply to former federal officials? It's an interesting question because the 11th Circuit could moot out the issue if they claim that a strict statutory construction of the removal statute is only for former federal officials, not for somebody who is not. I think what the argument will be, and they gave a very condensed or truncated briefing on this, the argument for Meadows and his compatriots are going to be, well, it can't be that because it's supposed to be for somebody who was acting in their capacity at the time. So it would have accrued at the time that they were federal officials. If the 11th Circuit wants to avoid having to deal with this, they could just rule, no, it only applies to somebody who's currently a federal official who is being prosecuted. And if that's the case, none of these gentlemen who have standing in order to invoke that or would be able to show that they are currently a federal official. But going back to the point, you had a judge at the district court level in the federal court appointed by Obama who, at least by most appearances, wasn't buying anything that they were selling. Interestingly, in the state court, you have a former Federalist devotee who is now a state court trial judge, McAfee. And I have been saying all along, be careful what you wish for. You may be better off in the state court than you are in the federal court, given the backgrounds of the respective judges. And for anybody who says no, judges just call balls and strikes, I know that theoretically that's supposed to be the case. Anybody who's practiced for more than 14 minutes will tell you that who your judge is or who your jury is much more important oftentimes than what your facts are. If that's the case, the state court judge has proven this week to be the case because he's already granted the severance, which, by the way, the Fani Willis's team was taking such an extreme and I would say idiotic position that they wanted all 19 defendants tried together. That was never going to happen. There was never going to be, and the judge, I think, was spot on in the state court. If you once again watched what happened as opposed to just read the breathless accounts that were in the media, because as he pointed out countless times, how in the world am I going to juggle speedy trial rights and some defendants who want their speedy trial versus those who basically just hired lawyers, Floyd being one of them, and have other things going on, Trump being another, and how am I going to force them to trial in basically 5 weeks, if that? And so it was a de facto severance. And anybody who reports that this was not a huge win for the defense is not being honest with you, because if you are on either side of this, you're thinking to yourself, I've just gotten what I want, because Cheesebro and Powell want a speedy adjudication because they know that as much as the prosecutors are saying they're ready to go, they're not ready to go. Yeah. They never are, even though they took years to bring this case. The idea of trying this case with 19 defendants, frankly, is a joke. If you want to go through and look at other RICO cases, other conspiracy cases that have been brought in the past, almost every single one of those, a judge will say, pick your groups, because we're not going to do 19 all at once. You want to separate them out into groups of 5 or 6. We're going to have 3 trials, or we're going to have 2 trials, but nobody's going to try a case 19 with, 38 lawyers and God knows how many other people in there. I remember years ago in a civil case with the MGM fire, they practically had to build a special courtroom just to house that trial itself. So it was unwieldy when it was brought. There's been a severance now of at least 2 coming attractions. They're going to sever off more as well. And we haven't heard the last of this. And by the way, I think that for those also who were looking at the Paxton trial, take a look at what happens when you actually take the accusations and you put the accusations or the accusers under oath and cross-examine them. A lot of times you will find that what is reported or what is claimed in a prosecutorial charging document sure doesn't hold up after you get into the light of day or under cross-examination.
Yeah, it's, I believe the judge also referenced something that you just alluded to, which was there's no courthouse that would be able to house that many. I mean, even if you were to eliminate the gallery, it's, between the Secret Service agents and the lawyers and the defendants. I mean, that's just not practical. So the idea that Fani Willis is clinging to that is a little bit laughable. Well,
and like I say, once again, don't believe me. Go watch some of the YouTube clips,
right? Because
the state court, unlike the federal court, the state court is televised. And take a look at the arguments. Take a look at what they're saying. Tell me if you listen to those arguments that you're going to buy anything that the prosecution is selling in at least procedurally. I'm not talking about the substance of it, but at least procedurally, that they created this Frankensteinian monster of a prosecution and are now claiming that they've got the ability or the willingness to try this thing right now as is. I mean, it's almost laughable.
All right, we've got 3 or 4 more clips here. Is there any one in particular?
I'm letting you curate. I got I went down my rabbit hole first, so it's up to you to curate the remainder of this.
All right. So former President Trump was recently on the Megyn Kelly show, and a lot of factions of the internet are saying that he further incriminated himself. Let's watch the clip and see what you think.
We have a deranged guy named Jack Smith who's been overturned at the Supreme Court a number of times, and he gets overturned. You know why he gets overturned? Because he goes too far. They don't even mention the Presidential Records Act. This is all about the Presidential Records Act.
Hold on for 1 sec. By the way, You know what he's referring to is something that we referred to, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. Jack Smith, when he was a U.S. attorney, brought a case against the then Republican governor of Virginia.
I think. Yeah, right.
Correct. McDonald or McConnell. I think it was McDonald.
I think it was too.
Convicted at the trial level. I remember watching that trial, not in real time, but talking to people who were involved and thinking this, talk about a bridge too far in terms of the prosecution, overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. And we had mentioned this also, Gary. This was not a 5-4 or 6-3 overturn. As I remember, it was unanimous.
Yeah, it was unanimous. I agree.
It was unanimous as stretching the bounds of criminal law to the point where it was almost unrecognizable. So for those who are saying, well, he's spouting off, what is he talking about? Just take a look. He's citing something that we've talked about, which is true.
And if memory serves, the opinion in that unanimous decision was scathing.
And by the way, the prosecution was, as I would characterize it at best, as a bridge too far.
Yeah. All right. Let's watch the end of this clip real fast here.
Records Act. This is all about the Presidential Records Act. I'm allowed to have these documents. I'm allowed to take these documents, classified or not classified. And frankly, when I have them, they become unclassified. People think you have to go through a ritual. You don't. At least in my opinion, you don't.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm also going to say I've been arguing this, and I know that I'm going to get the same comments when people watch it, but I understand when somebody says no one is above the law. I get that. However, when no one is below the law, and the classified documents are classified for a reason. They go up to the top. You have a system where intelligence is classified so that only people who need to see it. Once it gets to the top, takes on a different character. And by the way, if the person who is at the apex doesn't have the ability to declassify, then what are we talking about? What I don't understand. You're telling me that under a constitutional system, some unelected person in either the executive branch, which reports, by the way, to the president, it's clearly not somebody in the legislative branch, and it's clearly not somebody, there isn't a judge's clerk who's saying it. Ultimately, it is in the executive branch where the DOJ is, where CIPA is administered, where the Presidential Records Act. You don't delegate this responsibility to an archivist. He's making an argument that while he's not invoking the precise language of the act, a bright lawyer is going to put this into a situation where I think a federal judge or judges may say that this is infirm when it's scrutinized, but you won't know until they present what it is or in what factual context. But there's a lot more going on here than people say. Just because somebody has the records with them. And by the way, I think that's one of the reasons that the classified records case is charged the way it is. It's charged uniquely to try to avoid this issue. But the problem is that, to quote another judge that I've had cases in front of, the turd in the punch bowl, so to speak, is the fact that this is the person who, when in real time, once again, when he was a federal official, when he was the president, is talking about documents that were either given to him or provided to him in real time when he was the president, not something that he got after the fact. So that is going to be, whether you like it or not, that is going to be front and center to the defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jewelry is having a big moment right now, and with hundreds of products popping up in your feed every day, it can be hard to find a brand you trust. Alex and Ani has been creating meaningful jewelry for over 20 years, designing pieces that connect you with all of life's important moments. With an emphasis on value, there's truly something for everyone. You might be most familiar with their signature charm bangle. This bracelet literally created the category of meaningful jewelry and had you stacking charms from your wrist to your elbow. This piece is an icon for a reason. Completely size inclusive, each bracelet is adorned with a symbol designed to tell your story and express your unique style. Beyond the bangle, you'll find stylish, affordable jewelry for every occasion, from classic pieces to bold statement looks. Don't know where to start? Alex and Ani makes it easy to unpack the trends you're after and sprinkle in your personality too. Each piece comes with a personalized message and meaning, truly making it the perfect gift. You can take comfort in knowing that you're shopping with a socially conscious brand as well. To date, Alex and Ani has donated over $60 million to nonprofits worldwide, connecting fashion and philanthropy in an easy, fun, affordable way. Visit alexandani.com right now to discover the confidence that comes with a perfectly accessorized piece of jewelry. Right now, Alex and Ani is offering our audience 20% off with code MIDAS at checkout. Again, head to alexandani.com. That's alexandani.com and use code MIDAS at checkout for 20% off your order.
All right, let's see. I've got one more here. This is a little bit long, so pause and stop it as you see fit. But this is Senator Romney.
Senator Romney. Why would you not pursue re-election?
I considered my age and the fact that at the end of a second term I would be in my mid-80s. And I think it's time for guys like me to get out of the way and have people in the next generation step forward, because they're going to be shaping the world they're going to be living in. And over the last a couple of decades, people of my age, the boomers, have done pretty well for ourselves. We voted for all sorts of benefits and programs for us, and we haven't paid for them. And I think some of the people that are coming along next want to have a say in how we leave the earth and how they prepare for the future they're going to live in.
Trump critic, did you feel like with him likely being on the ballot next year, it would give you trouble running for re-election?
There was a recent poll in Utah which had me showing some very strong numbers. I was very pleased to see that. I think the people in Utah don't all agree with me on the posture I took with regards to Donald Trump, but they respect people who vote their conscience, and I appreciate that in my fellow citizens. And I don't have any question in my mind that if I'd have run again, I just don't think that we need another person in their 80s. I'm a little long of tooth already. We don't need more like me. The issues of the day relate to China, climate change, AI, and a lot of guys in their 80s who know how to deal with those issues.
You mentioned your age as one of the reasons for not running for re-election. Is that a nice way to say to some of your colleagues who are older that maybe it's time for them to step down as well?
Well, everybody's going to make their own decision, of course, and consider their own circumstances. I just looking at my age and where I am, I wish if I knew that I was going to be like Chuck Grassley and be able to be vigorous and dynamic into my 90s, I might have reached a different decision, but you never know. But I do think that the times we're living in really demand the next generation to step up and express their point of view, and to make the decisions that will shape our American politics over the coming century. And just having a bunch of guys who were around, the baby boomers, who were around in the post-war era, we're not the right ones to be making the decisions for tomorrow.
For whatever you say about Mitt Romney, he couldn't be more right. I mean, the idea, go across. I mean, I know he thinks Grassley and McConnell are still vibrant, although McConnell, I think, is taking his lumps. But if you go down the list of Pelosi and Biden and Trump, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Gary, is very close in age to Mitt Romney, the
77 currently.
And how old is Mitt? Or is that how old Mitt is?
No, that's Trump. Mitt is 76.
There you go. You would think as a late in the game boomer myself, it makes a lot of sense. Why do we have Biden versus Trump? Why do we have at least Pelosi step down so that the next generation could take over? I'm going to give her credit for that, but Mitch McConnell, really, and Chuck Grassley. I know he can do push-ups. I give him credit for that. But at a certain point, I don't know why there isn't more young blood, so to speak. And he's absolutely right. The boomers have disproportionately had the benefits, myself included. And it's time for another generation, I think, to be given the chance to govern and do what they normally do. You know, living in California, Gary, we've went through this once before with Prop 13. You're probably too young to remember. There's been a number of Prop 13s since, but that was kind of a selfish move where people who were older than I am now basically froze their property taxes and kind of shifted the burden onto the next generation, which I always thought was not only rather short-sighted, but made no sense from a policy standpoint. It's certain of what should happen. I would think from a public policy standpoint is that as if your property taxes keep going up and you're not using the school system, for instance, is one of the things that property taxes, at least in California, are presumably paying for. Well, then downsize and move out and let somebody else have a chance to live in the neighborhood, as so to speak. And unfortunately, school systems, or fortunately, are correlated to property values. So I just thought it was an interesting way to go out this week, is take a look at Mitt Romney talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who is maybe from that next generation he's talking about, I'm torn because, he's just watching those clips. He's so eloquent. So do I want that person stepping down? I mean, especially when you consider McConnell, Feinstein, some of these other elected officials who are just grasping with all their might to stay in there. I would rather have, that eloquent voice in the room, but I also agree with him that it is time for those people to step down. And there's really not a way to go about it aside from these, elder statesmen making the decision and being the adult and saying, okay, my time is done. Let's move on. And it's just, it's a very it's a tough one to figure out.
Well, you might remember last time I was doing Adam and Drew with subbing in for Adam, and Drew and I were talking about how fast the decline can be once you get into that band, that age group.
I do remember.
Especially, it wouldn't apply to Mitt Romney, but we were talking actually to drinkers that at a certain point, they just go kind of, to Drew's point, off a cliff, so to speak. It's a rapid decline. And I don't think that is untrue. And I think Romney kind of hinted at that, saying if he knew that he would be vibrant and still clear and have a clarity of thought into his 90s, that would be a different thing. But he recognizes it. I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's great to have somebody with institutional knowledge at the same time. And I do disagree, having spent an inordinate amount of time in Utah in the last couple of years trying cases. Utah is not, they don't just walk in lockstep. For the most part, anecdotally at least, it's a very independent place where they have their own unique viewpoint, and I think they appreciate the fact that Romney speaks his mind, and he probably could have been reelected. So I don't think he was in trouble, to say the least. I think he did the honorable thing.
Yeah, I do too. I completely agree. I think he could have easily been elected one more time, if not more. And I applaud him for what he did. But I do fear losing that institutional knowledge. I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing for everyone, but that's the decision he made, and I do applaud that.
Yep. Well, maybe midweek if we get one of the Paxton lawyers in here, Gary. If not, I'll see you next Sunday at the Altar of Bard.
Thanks for your time, Mark. We appreciate it. You have a good one.
You too, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.